Hello. Thank you for joining us for this virtual program, Food for Thought, a toast to Blondell with Jazmín Urrea. I'm Joshua Oduga, Public Programs and Exhibitions Manager at Art and Practice, and we are very excited to share this virtual program with you. This program is organized in association with Art and Practice's current exhibition, Blondell Cummings, Dance as Moving Pictures, a co-presentation with the Getty Research Institute, and the exhibition is on view until February of 2022. For this program, we welcome Jazmin Urrea, visual artist and LA-based sculptor working in multiple mediums, including installation, photography, video, sculpture, and performance. She received her MFA in photography and media from Cal Arts and a BFA in photography from CSU Long Beach. Jazmin, nice to meet you, or nice to see you. I don't know why I said nice to meet you.
Nice to see you and meet you too.
Yeah, right? How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, excited, nervous, but so happy to be with you today.
Yeah, great. I want to give a little bit of context on why I invited you to this program before we get into it. During Blondell's career, she created a series of dances titled Food for Thought. These works included a suite of performances collected on a single tape that represented Blondell's kinetic meditation on the importance and specificity of food. So she was really thinking about food a lot in her work. And as I was working on this exhibition and spending so much time with the work, I also started thinking a lot about artists and dancers and writers who I knew who were using food in their work and really acting as storytellers, like I think of Blondell is. And I wanted to invite you to do this because I had a chance to experience some of your work and really think about you as a storyteller before I had a chance to meet you and talk to you. So you and two other people are participating in this little program series within a program series. And one of the things that's really interesting is you are the one person I think that identifies as an artist out of those three people.
Okay.
For me, when I think of art, I always think of artists as like storytellers.
Yeah.
So I invited you here to tell us a little bit of story and to do it in a way that you thought would be interesting. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about what you're going to do, and then we can get right into it.
Yeah, so let me stand up real quick. So today what I wanted to do was start off with a champurrado, and champurrado is a Mexican hot chocolate drink typically made with masa de maíz, which is corn flour. And the reason why it's super special is because it's made for holidays, special occasions, and I wanted to make it today because, as the series is called, it's Food for Thought, a toast to Blondell. So I thought, what better way than to bring in the holidays as well as a toast to Blondell by making this for us today. Even though I can't share it with you, I still wanted to at least share the recipe.
Yeah, definitely. And I was telling you before we started that I'm definitely going to try to do it. So I think everybody watching as well could use it as a model to potentially do it on their own. And we also will share the recipe, which you shared with me below the program when everyone's watching it. So they'll be able to try it on their own if they want.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for sure. So I'll just get into it really quick. So what we're going to need is any type of chocolate, but typically it's made with abuelita chocolate. Not sure if you've seen this tablet at your local grocery store. It's made with piloncillo, which looks like this. It's like a sugar cane, but in the shape of a cone. And then I'm using maseca, which is super easy to get. It's just corn flour. A cinnamon stick, milk of your choice. Honestly, I kind of regret not trying it with oat milk because I feel like it would be really good. But we're just using 2% today. And water. So let me get started before we get into the story. So I'm going to slide this out. And I'm going to bring my stove in. Since I'm in my studio, I got to improvise. We're bringing in my makeshift stove. So what we do first is pour in our 4 cups of water. And then we throw in our cinnamon stick. So essentially think of this part kind of like steeping tea.
Yeah.
And this will happen for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm just gonna set a little mini timer for myself just to make sure we're on track. And what you want to do while this is happening, we get our flour, which this is a, how much is it? A fourth cup of flour. And we'll bring in our 2/3 cup of water. So this is really, really important, Joshua, and everyone who will potentially see this. We want to pour it in slowly. And we want to take a little whisk. So I have this little baby one from Dollar Tree. So you want to whisk this in, but you want to make sure that you have kind of like a soupy texture, because what's going to happen is that this is going to go in there. And this, we don't want this to clump up. We don't want it to turn into something, that it shouldn't be. We want it to be nice and mixed in. It'll kind of resemble like an Alfredo sauce. That might be like the worst analogy, but but it'll be kind of soupy like this. This is what you'll want. And we will make sure that I got all the clumps out, and then you just set it aside. And then now we can get into the story for now. So if it's okay with you, I'll be jumping back and forth. So once the timer goes off, we'll go to the next step, but we can start with the story if you will allow.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I grew up in Compton for the first 9 years of my life or so. And my parents decided we should move over to Watts because it's the first home that they were buying. And I begged my parents. I remember I did not want to leave where we were living at the time. I was like, no, I have all my friends there. And they made a deal with me, right? They were like, okay, fine. We will move over to our new home in Watts and we'll drive you to school every day. So, I was ecstatic. I was like, yes, this is what I want, what I've been dying for. I get to be around my friends. It's going to be awesome. So I start going into middle school, 6th grade. And I start developing this really bad habit that goes along with also hanging out with my friends and stuff. And it was eating hot Cheetos and drinking a Gatorade every day for breakfast. So, that you can already imagine how terrible that is, already snacking early on in the day. So she dropped me off my mom would drop me off like 7:30 every day, and I'd run to the vending machine with my friends and grab a hot Cheetos and Gatorade. And this started spiraling into me doing this for lunch and dinner too. It got to the point where I could like kill a bag of flaming hot Cheetos that was like the super party size bag. It was getting to the point where I was like seriously eating this a lot.
Yeah.
So much. So what ended up happening is I did this for about 2 months. Like this was going on for a very long time. And I remember it was actually, I believe around November, where I woke up shaking uncontrollably in sweat. Like this was at 3 a.m. or so. And I couldn't like stop throwing up.
Oh my
It was just constant. I know. Sorry, I should have said trigger warning, but so trigger warning now. So my mom's freaking out, and she's like, "What in the world is going on with you?"
Yeah.
So she takes me to the ER, and to preface this hospital's now closed. It's called, oh my gosh, what was it called? Suburban in Paramount. I don't know if have you ever driven to Paramount? It's super chill little city, kind of by like Lakewood, Long Beach area.
Yeah.
So it's super small.
Yeah.
So she ends up driving me there. We spent like this whole time in the ER. And at the time, I remember them bringing me back and asking me, hey, so what's on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain level? And they held up like a little sign, and they asked me to pick the smiley face because I was around 11, 12.
Yeah.
So I was like, I didn't want to make anyone worry. And I was like, it's like a 5. So they just brought me back and they were like, okay, she just probably has like a really bad stomach ache, not a big deal.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, which happened, but yes, that happened. And so I ended up going back to school, resuming my diet for the next couple of days, hot Cheetos and Gatorade. And in the next couple of days, like about 4 days later, same thing happens again. I wake up sweating, chills, throwing up. I think my sister made it worse because she handed me, oh my gosh, what is it called? Not Pepto-Bismol, but I don't, there are these like dissolving tablets that fizz up in water. What is that called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Tums?
I think it's like Tums. I forgot what it's called. But yeah, it's supposed to be
like
Alka-Seltzers. Yes. She handed me an Alka-Seltzer to drink, and it made it even worse. I was worse than before. So then again, my mom takes me again to this hospital, and I'm just going through the same process again. The doctors ask me what's my pain level, and they obviously take it more seriously since I had already been there the same week. So they take me back, and they start doing CT scans, and they can't pinpoint anything. They don't see anything on them. And what they end up doing is they choose to pump my stomach. And at that point, I was like, oh gosh, no. Like, I really don't want to do this. But, you know, obviously it's a process. So they prepared me. I was laying down. And the worst part is that this is a trigger warning. So avoid, leave, skip if you want to not see, hear this. But they give me a glass of water, and then they start inserting the tube through my nose, and they tell me to swallow. And I remember it was the worst pain and feeling in the world because you can literally feel tubes going down through you, right?
Yeah.
But this is the kicker. This is what I remember. Like, now they lay me down and like they start pumping, and all I see is just red coming out, just like red food coloring coming down through these tubes, and I'm just like, what is happening? So mind you, I'm like 12. I think I'm dying. My mom's in the background, like, what is going on? So then they just tell her, you know, we really think we need to keep her here until we fully understand what's going on. So at this point, mind you, they just think it's something I ate. Mm-hmm. So couple of more days go by. They keep doing tests. Like, it was to the point where like they left me super bruised because it was blood work, ultrasounds, CT scans. They were like, what is going on? We know it has something to do with her diet. They thought, you know, maybe it was ulcers because I told them, like, you know, I like to eat a lot of spicy stuff, maybe. So they like went down that route. They were interviewing me, asking my mom all these different types of crazy questions. They were like, you know, is she involved in anything weird? Is she, you know, they started to like pry too much where my mom started low-key getting offended. And she was like, what do you think my daughter's doing? So it gets to the point where I have a final ultrasound, and they tell my parents, so we think we need to go into emergency surgery. It looks like it's her appendix that's about to burst. So they get my parents to sign all this crazy paperwork, and then they wheel me off. And I vividly can still remember too, like, I know that nowadays they don't do it so much anymore, but when I was being put to sleep, they asked me to count back. And I completely passed out at like number 8 or something super. I was like 10, 9, and then passed out.
Yeah.
And my mom told me too that they were just worried by the doors while this was all going on because, mind you, this was like, I guess I was their first child that had ever gotten like this sick. So both my parents were there. At the time, they both worked warehouse jobs. So, you know, this was like a for real, like, financial moment for them. They were like, okay, we really have to be here. Something could go completely wrong. So I get wheeled back out. And then they let my parents know. They're like, okay, so surgery is a success. I was still drowsy, mind you. I can overhear them talking above my body. So if you can picture that, I'm laying down, my parents are here on the sides of me, and then the doctor's on the other side, like, so we just completed surgery. We removed her appendix, but we also found ovarian cysts. And we didn't have time to let you know. So we just removed them and tried to save her ovaries. And I just remembered going back to sleep again after that. And then they woke me up to let me know what had happened. And I was just like in disbelief, right? I was like, what do you mean? What's going to happen to me now? Oh, wait. So while we're at this high, I must stop because the timer has come up.
Yeah. That's like a really suspenseful place for me to stop the story. I'm like on the edge of my seat.
That's the point, you know. I'm trying to be the Marvel of artist time. I'm just kidding.
Like really intense. I'm like, it started with hot Cheetos, but there's so much more going on.
So at this point, we remove our little lid, and then we were essentially cinnamon tea at this point. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna go in with a little spoon, and we're gonna fish out our cinnamon. I'm gonna put this in here. And this part, you know, it's optional, but people like to also use like a little strainer, something like that, to fish out any little bits that have broken down. But I just use a spoon. So while our tea's still very, very warm, you know, since we brought it to a boil, and I think I forgot to mention, we do use low to medium heat because we don't want it to burn. So that's what I'm using. What we're gonna do at this point is we add in our chocolate. So I'm adding about 3 ounces of chocolate. This is how much this is, but you can use cocoa powder, anything you wanna experiment with. That's why this recipe is kind of fun. And this is also the point where you want to adjust your sweetness level, because once we add in the flour, it's gonna be kind of difficult. So I already cut up my sugar cane, which was in this form again, just as a little reminder. Yeah. So I'm gonna toss that in there, and we're gonna let it dissolve for a little bit. And in a couple seconds, we'll add in our milk.
Nice.
And like I said, you're able to do your milk of choice. This is what it looks like. It's already, I don't know if you can see it, it's already dissolving in there, so it's still pretty warm. I'm gonna bring in.
What is the chocolate? Yes. Like? What, is it just like a standard chocolate? That's a Mexican chocolate, so does it have like spices?
It is a Mexican chocolate, and typically it does not. Oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? It doesn't come with spices, but it is a sweetened chocolate tablet, so it's already pre-sweetened. But when we started our steeping stage with the cinnamon, that is when you're able to add in other spices. Some people like to add cloves. Totally up to you. Like this is what's fun about it, is that you can experiment with it.
Yeah.
So no fear in that. Just you can even play with the ratio. So some people like it milkier, but the traditional way is 4 cups of water, and then you gradually add in your milk or choice. So you can even do evaporated milk if you want to. So let me start another timer. 5 minutes so that everything can dissolve. Okay, let me see. Where did we leave off, Joshua? Oh yes, I left you at the height of all the drama.
You just finished surgery. You just got out of surgery, and you moved cyst as well, and you were just like, too much, I think. You were just like, that's too much.
Yeah, so I get out of surgery. The thing that ends up being wild about this story is just because secretly I feel like there was a little bit of unprofessionalism that went on. Because I remember my parents were not in the room after like I fully woke up out of my anesthesia state. And I remember a nurse coming in and telling me like, yeah, we removed your ovaries. You won't be able to have children again. And I'm like 12. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What? You know, I like freak out. My parents come back in. I let them know what happened. And I think they filed a report like at that point because, you know, like they hadn't even told me what had happened. So it just went into this whole different thing. But back to the story, the main story. So I ended up having to stay hospitalized for about a month and a half as aftercare because it wasn't just a traditional appendectomy. So it wasn't just like the little scar that you would get on your right side. It went across. So they called it like a bikini scar. So I even did like a little bit of physical therapy after, because I wasn't even really able to, I wasn't able to really move around on my own. And I remember, this is also another terrible side story, but I'll add it in. This is gonna embarrass me for days, but I'll tell you, Joshua, because you know we're friends. It was the week that we were preparing, or it was the week they were preparing to let me go. But the one thing that they told me is, because it was like a stomach type situation surgery, that I needed to have a bowel movement before I got discharged.
Yeah.
So my dad had the worst idea in the world. I do not recommend anyone do this. But he ends up buying me like a crazy smoothie from like this super traditional Mexican shop. He sneaks it in, hands it to me, and is like, "Here, just take a couple sips." And I was like, "Okay," because at this time, all I was eating was hospital food. Like they literally had me on hospital food.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll try it." And tell me why, instantly within 5 minutes, I had to jog. Had to jog to the restroom, and the nurses yelled at my dad. They were like, "That is not how you're supposed to do that. She has stitches. This could all go," you know. I mean, funny now, but terrible, terrible parenting then. But still, shout out to my dad.
Sometimes I think dads don't think about those kind of things, but
they really, I mean, we love dads, but sometimes, sometimes, you know, it was too much, but totally fine. We're still here. So to circle back to my whole Cheeto saga. So this all started because of my poor diet, and they made me aware of that as they were discharging me. But the interesting thing, and the reason this experiment, or not experiment, oh my gosh, this surgery like sticks with me, and like it was the catalyst for a lot of the work that I'm doing now, is because I remember a month later going in for my checkup, and it was not the primary doctor that used to see me. It was the person who did my surgery. So it was my surgeon. And I remember going to her, she's checking everything out, and I remember vividly asking, you know, 12-year-old me, super excited, like, can I still eat hot Cheetos? Can I still keep eating, you know, the snacks I love? And I remember her telling me, like, "Yeah, sure. Go ahead, knock yourself out." She's like, "Yeah, you can keep doing that." And then fast forward a couple months later, my primary physician told my mom, like, "You should really try to wean her off of eating that, because a lot of that is what caused what she was experiencing, you know." Like, so from there, I tried to change my diet, but I'm not gonna lie to you, that like hot Cheetos were super ingrained in me.
Yeah, like it's the LA.
And it's a terrible thing. Well, exactly. It's totally an LA thing, and it still is now more than ever. I mean, I don't know if you've seen all of the great snacks that are now coming out. I mean, they even have it in like traditional, you know, how at Mexican shops you'll see esquite, which is the corn with the mayonnaise and the cheese, and now you get it topped over with some hot Cheeto dust.
I was at the park,
you know, so it's a super.
And I saw some kids eating it and they were really young, and I was thinking, I couldn't eat that back when I was that young. It took me a while to get there, and yeah, it's really interesting. I think as you're saying all of this, I was just thinking about how much I know people, and how myself I used to eat that as a food all the time. And there are times when it's like, oh, you get kind of sick to the stomach eating it. It's this kind of weird manufactured thing that you don't really know what it is, but it's also really delicious at the same time. And I think what's really interesting to me is how that is like the catalyst to you thinking about other things really later in life. I talk to a lot of artists, and sometimes they have these really crazy life experiences that often are the things that make them want to start making work, or when they do make artwork, it kind of motivates them in one way or another. I always love those kind of stories, because oftentimes I find they are really crazy things like what you just said. Yeah.
No, I mean, and honestly too, the reason why it pushed me to to start exploring it even more is because right after high school, I started working for LAUSD, and I was working at their preschool division. And a lot of my students, I'd see them come in with Cheetos and like a little soda, and I was like, uh-oh. And then it just started making me, think about just, I don't know, it just was making me think about my story and everything that had gone, what I had gone through. And it just kind of led me to start exploring with food as a medium.
Yeah. Yeah. And like,
so here we are.
I think that's the thing, to bring it back kind of full circle, that I really love about what you do, is thinking about food as a material, and thinking about how that material, like, it's different across cultures, and how different people are going to have different experiences, even if that's not necessarily so much of the attention and the intention. I think it's really exciting for me. And it's also a really interesting parallel to Blondell as well. I think that she has some artworks, even artworks that don't relate to food, where she's thinking about her own body, and the experiences that her body may
Yeah.
have, which are really interesting. There's one in the exhibition, a piece called Cycles, which is about um, the female menstrual cycle, and all of these things I think are really interesting, because there's so many different reasons why a person can decide to be an artist or make artwork, and then share that with other people. But for me, I think it's often really powerful when you think about these personal experiences. And after Blondell made that work, she went on to start an organization called Cycles, and like it became a whole thing for her. Like, and it was this really generative thing.
Yeah.
She was really thinking about her body, and then what happened to her body, and what
Yeah.
happened to her body, and then it became an outlet for other people. So I see, even from what you just said, it's like, you became a teacher working in LAUSD, and you started seeing kids with drinks. And it's really interesting to me that only nowadays are they really starting to advocate for like better snacks, and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah, seriously.
because hot Cheetos are delicious, and it's not that you shouldn't have them ever. It's more just like, maybe you shouldn't eat it every day, but if you don't know, those things. Yeah.
Oh my God. No, you're totally right. And I think I honestly, like, from workshops that I've done and also other conversations I've had with other community members, it's like education truly is power. And it's just knowing your nutrition, and like you said, it's eating in moderation. It's not that it's like something that should be banned for life, or but it is, education is power, and knowing your nutrition and will honestly, I think, benefit us all, right?
Yeah, totally.
And at the time I didn't know. I thought I was, oh, what was that?
I said maybe it's like a special occasion thing, like the champurrado, maybe you only have it at times.
I know, right? It's a sweet drink. Oh yeah, speaking about that, we must move into the final step. Oh. So our corn flour is the final step. So at this point, everything's dissolved.
Yeah.
It's like a nice little chocolate. I don't know. I don't think the screen, I think my lighting won't show it, but it is a brown color now. So this is the spooky part. You have to spoon it in here super, super quickly. Want to drop it all in. And this is the part that, the labor of love. It's a cool 10 minutes that you have to stir this in here. So, and the reason for that is so that you don't have flour rising to the top.
Okay.
And it doesn't stick to the bottom. But, like a true chef that I am, Joshua, like the true chef that I am, this is your final result. Wow, I already have a cup of it made.
It's like you secretly are doing a pilot.
I made it.
Cooking show right now.
I know, right? My secretive pilot. But yes, here's the final result. It's super, super delicious. And the more that it sits, the more it will thicken. So that's what I was saying, going back to saying that, like, your ratios you can play with, and it's a really fun and easy recipe. Like, I feel like a lot of people are like spooked by it, but it's honestly super fun. And once you get it down,
it's easy. And I
it's a
love
vibe.
these where you can kind of throw your own flavor into it. And one of the
For
things
sure.
that before we talked about, I was saying that I always see people around LA, like at different taco trucks and restaurants that I go to, they're always ordering it. And I could tell that it was like a special thing, but I didn't really know. But this is helping me understand a lot more. And I really love recipes and things that you can throw your own like flavor into it. And so I already can tell that this can be some things that you can use a different milk or you can throw in
for sure
a recipe. So I'm sure from family to family, there's like a different recipe. And you can, you know, make it different ways. And I think it's really interesting. It goes back to your work in a really interesting way. And the stuff that we were just talking about, it's like kind of making it your own. And yeah, I wish I had some to try, but I'm definitely going to try. I think you have to like drink some. You have to like, if
oh, of course. A toast to Blondell, and thank you for inviting me too.
Yeah. And like I said, we're going to share the recipe as well. So everybody will be able to make it on their own and they can do their own little toast to Blondell. I think this time is a really good time to do that as everybody's like coming together and it's various different holidays and
Oh,
things
for sure.
celebrating. Thank you so much for doing this. This is really exciting for me. Is there anything else that you want to add before we end?
Try the recipe. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you so much. And honestly, I also want to thank you and Art in Practice for introducing me to the work of Blondell. Like, such an icon. I'm so happy to have been invited to be a part of this, and I'm gonna go back to the show before it comes out. I have to come by again.
Yes, thank you. Let me know when you're gonna come by. I'll be excited to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you so much, Joshua.